Today is May 24th. Welcome to Big Book Daily. My name is Rob. I am an alcoholic. It is a thrill, honor, and joy to be here with you today as we journey through the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions. Today out of the Big Book, we're going to continue our journey through Into Action by reading pages 80 and 81. And we're going to begin our third set of personal stories. They lost nearly all. And the very first story in that set is My Bottle, My Resentments, and Me. We're going to read 435 through 438. And finally, we're going to continue our journey through tradition number 5 out of the 12 and 12 by reading page 151. So with all that, my friends, hope you're doing well this morning. Hey, we've been given a brand new day, brand new set of 24 hours. And hey, we'll take one step at a time, one day at a time. And let's go ahead and get to the good stuff. All right, my friends. So yesterday we were talking about the beginning of step 9 in Into Action. And today we're going to kind of build on that idea by, making sure that we get a second opinion before we make those direct amends. So again, we're on page 80. We're reading 80 and 81. Before taking drastic action which might implicate other people, we secure their consent. If we have obtained permission, have consulted with others, asked God to help, and the drastic step is indicated, we must not shrink. This brings to mind a story about one of our friends. While drinking, he accepted a sum of money from a bitterly hated business rival, giving him no receipt for it. He subsequently denied having received the money and used the incident as a basis for discrediting the man. He thus used his own wrongdoing as a means of destroying the reputation of another. In fact, his rival was ruined. He felt that he had done a wrong that he could not possibly make right. If he opened that old affair, he was afraid that it would destroy the reputation of his partner, disgrace his family, and take away his means of livelihood. What right had he to involve those dependent upon him? How could he possibly make a public statement exonerating his rival? After consulting with his wife and partner, he came to the conclusion that it was better to take those risks than to stand before his Creator guilty of such ruinous slander. He saw that he had to place the outcome in God's hands, or he'd soon start drinking again, and all would be lost anyhow. He attended church for the first time in many years. After the sermon, he quietly got up and made an explanation. His actions met widespread approval, and today he's one of the most trusted citizens of his town. This all happened years ago. The chances are that we have domestic troubles. Perhaps we are mixed up with women in a fashion that we wouldn't care to have advertised. We doubt if, in this respect, alcoholics are fundamentally much worse than other people. But drinking does complicate sex relations in the home. After a few years with an alcoholic, a wife gets worn out, resentful, and uncommunicative. How could she be anything else? The husband begins to feel lonely and sorry for himself. He commences to look around in nightclubs or their equivalent for something besides liquor. Perhaps he's having a secret and exciting affair with the girl who understands. In fairness, we must say that she may understand. But what are we going to do about a thing like that? A man so involved often feels very remorseful at times, especially if he is married to a loyal and courageous girl who has literally gone through hell for him. Whatever the situation, we usually have to do something about it. If we are sure that our wife does not know, should we tell her? Not always, we think. If she knows a general way that we have been wild, should we tell her in detail? Undoubtedly, we should admit our fault. She may insist on knowing all the particulars. She will want to know who the woman is and where she is. We feel we ought to say to her that we have no right to involve another person. We are sorry for what we have done, and, God willing, it shall not be repeated. More than that, we cannot do. We have no right to go further. Though there may be justifiable exceptions, and though we may wish to lay down no rule of any sort, we've often found this to be the best course to take. Our design for living is not a one-way street. It is as good for the wife as for the husband. If we can forget, so can she. It is better, however, that one does not needlessly name a person upon whom she can vent jealously. All right, some interesting stuff there, guys. We'll move on to the personal stories. All right, we are beginning our third and final section of the personal stories today. This is They Lost Nearly All. This is on page 435. The 15 stories in this group tell of alcoholism at its miserable worst. Many tried everything: hospitals, special treatments, sanitariums, asylums, and jails. Nothing worked. Loneliness, great physical and mental agony, these were the common lot. Most had taken shattering losses on nearly every front of life. Some went on trying to live with alcohol. Others wanted to die. Alcoholism had respected nobody, neither rich nor poor, learned nor unlettered. All found themselves headed for the same destruction, and it seemed that they could do nothing whatever to stop it. Now sober for years, they tell us how they got well. They prove to almost anyone's satisfaction that it is never too late to try Alcoholics Anonymous. All right, my friends, so we're going to begin our first story on page 437. We're reading 437 and 438. My Bottle, My Resentments, and Me. From childhood trauma to Skid Row drunk, this hobo finally found a higher power, bringing sobriety and a long-lost family. When I rode into a small mountain town in an empty freight car, my matted beard and filthy hair would have reached nearly to my belt if I'd had a belt. I wore a lice-infested, grimy Mexican poncho over a reeking pajama top and a ragged pair of jeans stuffed into cowboy boots with no heels. I carried a knife in one boot and a .38 revolver in the other. For 6 years, I've been fighting for survival on skid rows and riding across the country in freights. I hadn't eaten in a long time, so was half starved and down to 130 pounds. I was mean and I was drunk. But I'm ahead of myself. I believe my alcoholism really began when I was 11 years old, and my mother was brutally murdered. Until then, my life had been much the same as any other boys who lived in a small town during that period. One night, my mother failed to return home from her job at a car manufacturing plant. The next morning, there was still no sign of her or any clue to why she disappeared. With great apprehension, the police were called. Since I was a mama's boy, this was especially traumatic for me. And to make matters unbelievably worse, a few days later the police came and arrested my father. They found my mom's mutilated body in a field outside of town and wanted to question him. My father was soon returned because the police had found a pair of glasses that did not belong to him at the murder scene. This clue led to the man who so brutally killed my mother. At school, the gossip was vicious. At home, there was chaos and no one would tell me what was happening. So I withdrew and began to block out the reality around me. If I could pretend that it didn't exist, it might go away. I became extremely lonely and defiant. The confusion, pain, and grief had begun to subside when an article appeared in a murder mystery magazine about my family's misfortune. The children at school started to gossip and scrutiny all over again. I retreated further and became angrier and more withdrawn. It was easier that way, because people would leave me alone if I acted disturbed even before they tried to inquire. Because my father was unable to care for all 9 of us, the family had to be split up. About a year later, he remarried, and my oldest brother offered to take me in. He and his new life tried to help me, but I was just so defensive that there was little they or anyone else could do. Finally, I took a job after school sorting soda bottles in a grocery store, where I found that I could forget if I had worked hard enough. In addition, it was a good place to steal beer and be a big guy with the other kids in school. That's the way my drinking began, as a way to make the pain go away. Oh man, some brutal stuff right here. My heart breaks for this man right here. We'll come back to this in just a minute. And finally, out of the 12 of 12, we're on tradition number 5. Each group has but one primary purpose: to carry its message to the alcoholic who still suffers. We're going to be reading page 151 today. There is another reason for this singleness of purpose. It is a great paradox of AA that we know that we can seldom keep the precious gift of sobriety unless we give it away. If a group of doctors possessed a cancer cure, they might be conscience-stricken if they failed their mission through self-seeking. Yet such a failure wouldn't jeopardize their personal survival. For us, if we neglect those who are still sick, there is unremitting danger to our own lives and sanity. Under these compulsions of self-preservation, duty, and love, it is not strange that our society has concluded that it has but one high mission: to carry the AA message to those who still don't know there's a way out. Highlighting the wisdom of AA's single purpose, a member tells a story. Restless one day, I thought I'd better do some 12-step work. Maybe I should take out some insurance against a slip. But first, I'd have to find a drunk to work on. So I hopped the subway to town's hospital, where I asked Dr. Silkworth if he had a prospect. Nothing too promising, the little doc said. There's just one chap on the 3rd floor who might be a possibility. But he's an awfully tough Irishman. I never saw a man so obstinate. He'd shout that if his partner would treat him better and his wife would leave him alone, he'd soon solve his alcohol problem. He's had a bad case of DTs and he's pretty foggy, and he's very suspicious of everybody. Doesn't sound too good, does it? But working with him may do something for you, so why don't you have a go at it? All right, so we'll stop there today. I have a feeling I know who this Irishman is. But yeah, I mean, again, I like the metaphor on page 151, that if a group of doctors possessed a cancer cure, they might be conscience-stricken if they fail to their mission through self-seeking. Yet such a failure wouldn't jeopardize their personal survival. So for us, if we neglect those who are still sick, there's unremitting danger to our own lives and sanity. So for me, if I don't do this podcast and try to carry the message, at least right now, that this type of service work, I need to do this. This helps me so much. And don't get me wrong, I'm hoping that it helps somebody else out there. I pray that every day, help me help one, God, please. But it's certainly helping me just by carrying this message. All I'm doing is trying to read the book. And it's really cool that every now and then I hear from somebody. I mean, it's only happened once so far that I know of. But it was somebody in Portugal from all places. So you never know. Never know the impact of just simply carrying the message. And all glory goes to God. And going back to a personal story real fast. My heart breaks for this man. Here's somebody that's really hurting and drinking to forget. I mean, I could not imagine such a childhood trauma happen. And it really reframes the way I look at people. Basically sobriety has reframed the way I look at myself and other people. I know this is just Robology, but I try to view other people as God's children. And everyone's got a story. Everyone. You may think your story's boring, but it's not. We've all got something that we've had to overcome, or we're still working on overcoming. Anytime I see somebody else, I try to remember that. And obviously this person has a traumatic story. But if this person's in this book, we know that there's a happy ending, an encouraging ending, or a message of hope. And speaking of hope, my friends, if you are sober today, there's hope right there. You are a shining beam of light to other people around you. If you are sober today, you are a miracle. And I'm sure those who love you are very proud of you. Thank you for joining me in this lifeboat of recovery. And as always, I don't speak on behalf of AA, NA, Al-Anon, or any other sect. I am just a man in recovery, grateful to be here today. And if we are given another set of 24 hours, I look forward to seeing you back here tomorrow.